I'm Maurice Baynett, I'm the Technical Director at ecoMaster, and today I want to show you how to fit EMV to a door. EMV is a low-cost and effective perimeter seal for draft-proofing the sides and the tops of doors. By the way, we can also use it for windows, however we'll look at that at another time. Now EMV comes in door sets. There's simple rolls like this, 5.5 meters in a set is enough to draft-proof most doors. Comes in white and in brown. Now maybe you've thought of using weather stripping to draft-proof doors. However, the problem with weather stripping is that it fits between the face of the door and the door stop. And so it gets sandwiched in there. And that means if the gap is a little bit bigger than the weather stripping, then we're not draft-proofing the door. And if the gap is a little bit smaller than the draft-proofing, the weather stripping, then the door may not latch. EMV is fundamentally different. It doesn't fit in that surface, it fits between the edge of the door and the door jamb, and so it never gets in the way of the door latching. Let's talk about some limitations of the EMV. Now while it's a great inexpensive perimeter seal, there are some limitations that I want to talk to you about so that if you get the EMV, you can be sure that it's going to work for you. The first is the gap between the door and the door jamb, this one here. Now we need at least 2 millimeters for the EMV, when it's folded up, to fit in there. You can test that very simply with a piece of EMV and just put it in there. If it's tight to fit, then that's no good. The next is the maximum size of this gap. So the EMV can handle a gap up to 7 millimeters. So if we've got a gap between 2 and 7 millimeters, perfect. And that's really most doors that you're going to find at home. The next thing is the adhesive. So if you look on the back of the EMV, it has adhesive down one side, and when we take the paper liner off, you will notice that the layer of adhesive is very thin. Now the good news is that it's amazingly strong adhesive. However, because it's very thin, it doesn't stick to rough surfaces. So if your door jamb, for whatever reason, is kind of rough to feel, a little bit like sandpaper, the EMV is not going to stick to that. Most door jambs, however, pretty smooth, so that's great. And finally, the EMV doesn't work well on the bigger gaps if the surface that it's rubbing against is not smooth. And that happens most often on the head of the door. So the sides of the doors are well painted and smooth, the head of the door sometimes isn't, it can be a little bit rough. So if you've got a large gap at the top of the door, maybe getting up for 7 millimeters, you might have a little bit of a problem with the EMV on the top. So bearing that in mind, if you're within those bounds, the EMV is going to provide you a long service and a really good seal for your door. Now let's look now at the steps for installing EMV. There's really only 3 steps. So firstly, clean the door jamb. It's crucially important with any self-adhesive application is to make sure that the surface is clean. Secondly, we're going to cut the EMV and fit it in the door jamb. And thirdly, we're going to fold it over and press it out to make sure that we get maximum bond between the adhesive and the door jamb. Let's look at the tools that you're going to need. Firstly, for cleaning, a damp microfiber cloth is a pretty good option. Simply clean around, but make sure before moving on to step 2 that any moisture has dried off perfectly. Secondly, to cut and fit the EMV, all we're going to need really is a pair of scissors. And finally, we're going to need something for pressing it out at the end after we've folded it over. And so we want something kind of fairly stiff, but not metallic. So you might have something like this at home, a plastic egg flip, which is going to be perfect for wetting out, what we call wetting out. That is pressing the adhesive out so that it bonds with the surface. Let's look at the installation now in detail. Step 1 is to very thoroughly clean the door jamb. Using your damp microfiber cloth, make sure you get right into the corners up top. This is very important because we want the EMV to go all the way to the corner and the adhesive to bond firmly. So it's often pretty hard to clean in the corner. Just persevere until the corners are very clean. Clean the rest of the door jamb, and particularly when you're getting down towards the bottom against the floor, again, it's pretty difficult to clean that, but persevere, because we want the EMV to come down almost to the floor. And we want it to bond well. So a clean surface is crucial to that. Step 2 is to cut the EMV to size and then fit. Start with the head. Put the EMV into one corner and then pull it across to the other and cut it a little bit longer than you need. Now that you've got your length, square cut one end of the EMV. Take the liner out about 10 centimeters and put the EMV in the corner. Now remember, we're going to fit about 2 millimeters away from the corner with the doorstop. This is very important, because if there's a little paint run or something, we don't want the EMV to get caught on that. So start pressing it out into the corner and then pull out the liner a bit more. It helps if you hold the EMV fairly tight. It makes it easier to line up properly, and then press out onto the door jamb. Continue this until you get to the other end. Now at this point you can fold the EMV over, put a little crease in the end, and then with your scissors cut a little bit shorter than the fold. Then pull out the rest of the liner and finish pressing on the EMV. Next, let's do the latch side. We need to start by square cutting the EMV and then cutting the little mitre in the corner. Again, take out about 10 centimeters of the liner and push the EMV up hard against the top one and line it up carefully and press onto the door jamb. Continue going down. When you get to the door latch, you can usually go straight over this, as the door will still latch afterwards once the EMV is folded. Continue down to the bottom. Again, put a little crease in it and cut a little bit shorter than the crease. Pull out the rest of the liner and press it onto the door jamb. Repeat the same process on the hinge side. Usually you can go straight over the hinges as well. Step 3 is to fold and press out the EMV. Again, start with the head. Start at one end and start folding it over, and just run your finger along the EMV. You'll see that the fold just happens naturally. With your wetting out tool, rub it up and down the EMV a couple of times to make sure that the adhesive is well bonded onto the door jamb. Repeat the same process down the sides. And that's just how easy it is to draft proof a door with EMV.